Hello everyone and welcome to this guide. In this video I will show you all the basics of Blight as well as some advanced stuff too. This guide is mainly for beginners, but even if you're not a complete beginner you might still learn a thing or two. Let's get started. Blight is one of the most difficult killers in the game, but also one of the strongest killers in the game. And once you understand how he works, he's honestly a lot of fun. Blight's power is called Blighted Corruption. His power allows him to rush at a very high speed and also attack during the rushes. Blight has 5 rushes by default, and there are 2 add-ons that can change the amount of rush tokens he has. There is also one add-on that allows you to get your rush tokens back faster. Let's talk about how you actually play Blight. 1 token gets used each time you bump into something. Between each rush you have time to readjust your direction, but you have to be fast in decision making because you only have a little time. If you wait for too long, the rush will end automatically. There are 2 add-ons that increase the time frame between rushes. You can attack during the rush when your rush is lethal. The first time you bump into an obstacle, your rush becomes lethal. You can also break pallets during your lethal rush. You can break them by pressing M1, same as an attack. You can also perform launch attacks during your lethal rush. When you're using your power for mobility, you can do a launch attack at the end of the last rush for that extra little distance. You don't need to spam your power whenever it's ready. Since you're a 4.6 meter per second killer, you can wait for the right moment and then use your rush. When your power is on cooldown, I would also recommend that you play very aggressively to get rid of some very strong pellets. So let's talk about all the advantages of Blight. Blight has an extremely high mobility, which means you can get to the other side of the map to defend a gen very quickly. Blight has also very strong chase potential, which can lead to some snowballing situations, and it's also possible to slug with Blight if necessary. Thanks to the Blight speed, you can also recover from decisive strike quite quickly, and perks like Sprint Burst are not as efficient as against other killers. Perks like Dead Heart are more dangerous to a Blight. You also have great synergy with certain perks. For example, aura perks are always a good idea on Blight, and also perks like Pop Goes the Weasel are extremely efficient on Blight. And if you're lucky enough to get a really open map like a farm map, Blight becomes an extremely lethal killer. However, Blight is decent on pretty much every outdoor map in the game. The problem starts with the indoor maps, which leads me to some of the difficulties that Blight has. Indoor maps, and especially Laris or the underground complex, are quite difficult for Blight. You cannot use your mobility as efficient as in outdoor maps, and also during chase it's much more difficult to navigate through the map. Another difficulty with Blight is the fact that you have to know pretty much every map very well because of weird collisions and specialities. So, for example, there are pashes on Eyrie of Crows that have collision where you would think they probably don't have collision, and if you jump off elevated places, sometimes you jump into an invisible wall. And also some rocks can be very frustrating, especially as a beginner. The only way to play around is to play a lot, and you need to get that experience of collision with Blight. Complex structures like some main buildings and also Hech can be quite difficult for Blight. But there are add-ons that can help you in this kind of situations. For example, the Rose Tonic or the Pustula Dust increase the time frame where you can adjust your next rush. Speaking of add-ons, let's talk about the add-ons I would recommend you as a beginner. It's always a good idea to run speed add-ons like the Blighted Crow or Blighted Rat on Blight, which increase the Blight speed on each following rush. You can also run add-ons that increase your turn rate like the Umbra Salt or the Plague Vial. And of course also the Rose Tonic or Pustula Dust I just mentioned before to help you with buildings like Hech. I also have to mention the Iridescent Blight Tag, which is arguably the strongest add-on of Blight. I would not recommend to use this add-on as a beginner, because it changes the way you play Blight quite fundamentally. And there are 3 add-ons that you should never use because they are so bad, which are the Placebo Tablet, the Chipped Monocle and the Compound 7. Just never use these add-ons. Let's talk about perks for Blight. As I mentioned before, aura perks like Lethal Pursuer or Barbecue are always a good choice on Blight. You benefit a lot from aura perks thanks to your high mobility and strong chase potential. Some of the most oppressive Chen defense perks like Pain Res or Pop work extremely well on Blight. As a beginner, I would recommend some passive slowdown perks like Deadlock or Corrupt Intervention without the requirement to hook people. So for a perk build, you could use something like Deadlock, Lethal Pursuer, Brutal Strength and Pain Res if you want some more chase potential, or if you want to go full slowdown you could run Pain Res, Corrupt Intervention, Pop and Grim Embrace, which is an extremely oppressive perk build. Let's talk about some chase techniques. During chase, you usually have multiple ways on how to use your rushes efficiently. You can do the bump logic route, which is basically following the survivor and react to their movement and hit at the right time. So you can also do some bump mind games where you pretend to go one way and then you go the other, or even do some aggressive ping pong Blight mind games. Another thing you can do is predict where they go and do some predict rushes, which lead to some really cool hits. Or you can do some really crazy creative hits where you jump off elevated places and do some really spectacular things. But this is more of advanced stuff. Speaking of advanced stuff, we will now cover a couple of techs and advanced things you can do with Blight. A quite popular tech on Blight is the virtual tech, or also called V1 tech. So basically the idea is if you're standing very close to an obstacle that you look in a 45-degree angle, so you can pretty much instantly make your rush lethal. If the angle is correct, you can bump into the obstacle even though it's extremely near, and then your rush is lethal. Another extremely popular mechanic is the Hugtech mechanic, which got removed, but you can still do something which is similar to the removed Hugtech mechanic. If you want to learn more about that, you can go watch my other video, I will link it in the description. A trick you can do at short loops is to do a launch attack to help with the collision. When you are doing a launch attack, the collision is pretty much removed, which helps a lot in short loops. A thing you can do on PC is to increase your turn rate by doing some settings. First of all, you need to go to input binding, and then you use E to turn right and Q to turn left. Then you go to controls and put the controller percentage up to 100%. I know it says controller, but it has nothing to do with controller, it only works on PC, so if you're playing with mouse and keyboard. If you hold Q or E now, you will see that the camera is moving in this direction very drastically. It's not a game-changing effect, but you can use this extra turn rate when you're going around a very tight corner, for example. That's it for now, I hope you learned a thing or two, thanks for watching, please consider subscribing if you like what I do, and see you the next time.